Graham Jason Mathis here, BleacherReport.com. Today we're talking to WWE Hall of Famer Stone Cold Steve Austin, ahead of the upcoming premiere of Stone Cold Takes on America, starting Sunday, April 30th on A&E, 10 p.m. Eastern Time as part of Superstar Sundays. Steve, very honored to be talking to you today. How are you, sir?
Man, I'm doing good. I'm drinking coffee, getting ready to crank out another day, and had an epic day of racing, and life is good.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I assume just sitting here talking about the show is a little bit easier than going out there and doing the bowling and the flight simulators and everything that we saw you take part in the show, right?
Well, and those were some of the indoor activities we got a chance to do. That flight simulator was amazing. That was a heck of an experience. Bowling with the seniors was probably one of my favorite segments that we did, because with respect to a lot of the outdoor stuff, man, when Annie finally greenlit this show and we got everything together and started getting out there and filming, well, first of all, they gave us a green light, and my wife and I said, well, surely they're going to push till spring. Like right now would be a great time to start shooting the type of show that we made. And it was in the dead of winter. So we got our butts kicked a couple of times. So I welcome the indoor segments. Some of the fish out of water stuff was extremely painful, but in the totality of everything, by the time, I got my ideas in there, they had their ideas. We did a lot of outdoor activity stuff and some cool adrenaline based stuff as well. So I had a blast, and I'm appreciative for the opportunity.
Of everything you did, what surprised you the most?
I don't know if this was a surprise. Well, it was a surprise because my call time was 12:45,
Mhm.
in the morning, and to go to a weather station at 2:15 a.m. to get on the weather with a young lady named Madison McKay and do the weather report. And man, she started showing me how she breaks down the weather. She was taking a paragraph like this and making it into pertinent information about like that just by looking at it. So she wasn't trying to psych me out, but I got so psyched out by what she was doing, I thought I had to perform at that level.
Mhm.
And that was the first time. And dude, I've been on live TV for years and I thrive in that environment. But I was figuring, hey man, it's a real snowstorm. I've got to get these people to work safely. And I froze up on live TV. I think it was the worst live television performance I've ever had. So that surprised me. And with the fact I didn't know about the call time either. But
Yeah.
that was a rough day at the office. And I tell you what, I got a chance to do a lot of driving in this show. And when you put professional, like I come from the pro wrestling world, right? So still, if you take wrestling and you put pro in front of it, that means you're going to be very good at it. A lot of the pros that I got a chance to hang out with, like with respect to driving or whatever skill that they were good at, they were professionals. Man, I'm coming into their world trying to do something I've always wanted to do, but they're so far head and shoulders above what you can do because they have the reps. But it's like at the end of my wrestling career, I was way better than when I started.
Mhm.
So hanging out with a bunch of pros, seeing at the level which things can operate was a real mind bender for me in a lot of ways, especially with some of the high speed stuff we were doing in the automobile world.
And with some of the driving stuff I know as well, you've already had experience with that on the Straight Up Steve Austin show a couple of years ago. You've kind of mixed it up with several people, talking to them there. So it's a bit of an overlap going into that sort of stuff, doing shows like that, and all the other shows, obviously, you've had over the course of your career outside of the in ring stuff. Did that kind of lend you some experience and give you some familiarity with what you were about to do with this show, or were you going in completely blind?
Well, no, I can't say it was completely blind because I had my ideas, network had theirs, but this was getting a chance to do some of the things that I've never gotten a chance to do.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of in shooting a season one, because we didn't shoot a pilot, and so first of all it was a concept. They got
Yep.
greenlit, and so really I look at season one, or because if you're not doing a pilot, you're throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. I think about midway, 2/3 of the way through the show, we saw what was sticking and what was running off and what we needed to focus on. So there was a lot of running and gunning and planning on the fly because, like I said, this when this show got greenlit, it was in real rapid fire fashion. So, man, the people behind the scenes were really trying to do a lot of homework and just trying to get stuff booked. And people were very accommodating because a lot of things that we did, they were like, eh. But when they said, hey, this is Stone Cold Steve Austin, people said, oh, well, then come on.
Yeah.
So the name or the following or whatever helped us, break through a lot of barriers to get a lot of things booked. But dude, it was It was chaotic at times. It was steady at times, and sometimes it was a head scratcher. And so, and a lot of times, I mean, we were laughing our asses off. So through it all, we got what we got.
Of everything that you've talked about so far and everything that we see in the trailer and the show that we're going to be seeing coming up this season, I think I'm looking forward to that weather episode you mentioned the most, as well as the bowling episode. I think, especially if the botch, as we want to call it, is on the episode, which I'm sure it's included. Can you talk about that a bit more as far as how it compares to, you talk about, like, cutting promos. You're one of the best talkers of all time, Steve. Like, how it compares to that and how it might be like, do you go into it thinking, I can memorize a promo, I can go off ad lib? Like, how does it compare to that sort of thing?
Well, it was a whole different thing because when I was watching that girl get ready to do the weather,
Yeah.
I thought I had to do as good a job as she was doing
Yeah.
because, and again, I'm not relying on, hey, I'll just go out there and be stone cold. I'm being Steve Austin. I didn't have that protective shield because I could have went out there, hey, if you want to get the weather report, give me a hell yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever, it's live television. But I psyched myself up or psyched myself out, and I got in my head, and I thought I needed to be as good as her, and there's no way I was going to be. But I will give WWE. But one of the good things about WWE is when you go there as a talent, man, you got to learn how to work because they've got some of the best workers in the world. But they're so good at teaching you how to handle different situations on live TV with the mic. That was one of the rare times, and I consider, I think I failed that day at the weather station. And with all my skills, I just got in my head and worked, as we would say in business, worked myself into a shoot.
And listen, those are the best learning experiences too. You got to go on TV and fail. I mean, the same thing goes for any on-air talent, superstars, whatever,
Oh, and I'll tell you what I learned from that. I'll never do it again.
There you go. You did it for the show. That's all that matters. And you talk about filming for the show throughout the winter season and not really so much in the spring when the weather is nicer now and whatnot. Has this taken up a majority of your time in the last year? Because I know fans were wondering why we didn't see you at Raw 30 a couple months ago earlier this year, the podcast and stuff like that on the network. Has this taken up a majority of your time?
Yeah, it did. There was an internal stop down with stuff that was out of our control.
Yep.
So we were down for a little over a month, which was nothing related to us. There was just a stop down. So originally the show was going to take, I think, give or take 3 months to shoot two, but it took close to 5.
Wow.
So yeah, man, it chewed up a lot of time. And again, the weather threw some monkey wrenches at us too, but it lasted a lot longer than I thought it would. So yeah, man. I mean, from just interviewing people for the podcast, as far as people say, "Hey, man, why did you do Mania?" They asked me to be a part of it, but as I told, and I'm telling everybody today, if they ask me, I didn't know what my life was going to look like until I finished filming the show. And I finished filming the show about 4 days before WrestleMania. And I drove every single mile in that RV. I took dumbbells with me on the road, a sandbag, and a kettlebell. And that's how I got my workouts in. And I was in decent shape for the show.
Yeah.
Funny thing was, when they greenlit the show, when I started getting ready, I hired a nutrition coach. I got down to 7% body fat. I got in the best shape I'd ever been in.
Wow.
And then it didn't pay off because the whole time, we're in 10-degree weather.
Yeah.
And I got about 10 layers on and a big car jacket. So I got into shape of my lifetime to be all covered up. So if it goes into another season or whatever, it'll be in warm weather and I'll be jacked.
And it'll better pay off. Those are like the times when you get into the best shape of your life. Not that I would know from experience, but it seems like talking to a lot of people, it's in those periods we don't even get to see you in the best shape of your life because this sort of stuff happens. Circumstances are just what they are. So it is what it is. But
well, here's an insider tip. Like right now, tomorrow they'll send a crew as they're putting these shows together. They'll send a crew tomorrow, and we'll do interviews in my shop. And so just watch the changes in the facial definition because I told my wife, I said, God dang, I'm in the beer business. So
yeah, of course.
I said, when I get, dude, I drink like 2 beers every Friday night during the duration of the film of the show, which is a little behind schedule for me. So I loaded up on some margaritas and beers. And so I was at 7%. I'm probably at 11 now. Still in decent shape, but you might see some difference in the facial structure at in the shop interviews.
We're looking forward to it. Well, on that note, actually, I'm from Connecticut. We don't have the beer too much over here, but someone that I know was in the area, I think in Mass maybe is where they
Yeah,
sell the IPA. So
yeah.
someone brought it on over, gave me a six pack. I'm not a drinker myself. I'm strongly considering it, but I did give it to some family friends. They wanted me to tell you they love the beer. So I just wanted to pass that message along.
Hey man, I appreciate that because man, when I got together with Els Gunner Brewing Company back in the day, that is me all over that beer. That's me dissertation beer with Rob, the owner, and telling him what I liked in a beer. And now we're going on. I think about this is our 8th year. We started in 15. It's now 23. A little over 8 years in business. That beer was never designed to leave that brewery. We're now in about 25 states. We're in Japan. We launched a lager due to popular demand. We just came out with a double IPA. And so that I don't do that as a vanity project.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I'm trying to make a ton of money. In the beer business, that's a passion project. Do I want to make money off of it? Yes, but that beer is all me and all else Segundo. So I'm proud of that beer. And if they like that beer, they know a good IPA.
I was gonna say everyone that I've recommended it to has said it's a good beer. Like they're not just drinking it because it's a stone cold beer. No, they're drinking it because it's an actual good beer, and that's a good thing to have.
Well, when we brewed that beer, I helped brew that batch. A month later, when it got ready, I went back to the brewery and I was like, man, I was nervous. I'm like, this could take 7 or 8 months, seven
Hmm.
or eight at times to get this formula right. And I'll never forget, man, we poured those first glasses, me and Rob and some of the guys. I took a sip of that beer and I said, man, that's a good effing beer. And I said that word. I said, hang on. I took another sip. I said, that's a good effing beer. And I said, hey, man, let me sleep on it. And the next day I called Rob back and I said, hey, man, when I got home, I was like, what can we do to make that beer better? And I was like, dude, there's a lot of stuff you can do to make it worse. I called him and said, hey, man, Rob, I want to run with that formula. And he goes, Steve, I'm glad you said that because if you weren't going to use it, I was. And we stuck with that formula. I helped create it based on my taste profile. So it's built for me. So if anybody's digging it, I'm proud of it. We've turned a lot of light beer drinkers, regular beer drinkers, into IPA heads because
Hmm.
that's why we came out with the lager for popular demand. But I digress. I'm proud of the beer, and I'm glad your folks liked it.
No, most definitely. I mean, you've had that going for almost a decade now. Obviously, all these shows and podcasts. We saw you back in the ring, obviously, last year at Mania. I was at that show. I've never seen you compete live before, so that was incredible. And you talk about, obviously, them wanting you for WrestleMania. We've heard all the rumors. You've talked ad nauseum about it over the last couple of weeks, obviously, today and all these interviews. When you say that they wanted you for that show, like, what was it? Can you specify exactly what they wanted you for, whether it was like an appearance, which we've seen you in before at Mania, or like a match? Was there any like concrete ideas at all?
Yeah, concrete idea was a match.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was a match and one of the top guys in the business. Period. So I let everybody speculate about that, but yeah, it was a match, and I just didn't think I could get. I didn't think I could get ready for it in time because I didn't know my schedule, which is what I told them. I don't know what my life looks like until I finish this show.
Hmm.
There's no way. I got away. Like you said, you was in Dallas. Man, it was a great show. That was a great crowd, and they welcomed me with open arms. That was a hell of a pop. I did the best I could in short notice to get ready for KO, and I barely did anything. This would have been a real competitive match. And I tell you what, man, those superstars that are out there on the road beating it every day, there's a different kind of shape between what I was trying to do. I was doing Becky Lynch's comeback workout. I was doing Daniel Bryan's workout. I did Edge's workout, and then I invented my own. But if you don't have a ring, Kevin Owens, for whatever people think about him, first of all, he's an amazing worker. He's an amazing talker, and he's in amazing shape.
Hmm.
I was constantly trying to monitor my systems out there because ring shape is a whole different thing that you can do in a gym. And one other thing I tell you, it was so fun to be out there with KO because I hadn't thrown a working punch in 19 years.
Yeah.
Killing him, I was knocking his head off. And I was thinking, in the business, when you start teeing off on a guy, finally after a guy's had so many of them, they send back what is called a receipt.
Yeah.
That means, hey man, you're killing me. He never sent back a receipt, and I laughed about it when we were talking, backstage after the match. But I was proud to go out there with Kevin Owens and put on the show that we did.
Well, it's safe to say, I guess, compared to 5 years ago, 5, 10 years ago, when you would say, listen, I'm done, I'm retired. After that match last year, the door could still be open if the offer was right, if the opportunity, if all the stars align, I guess, so to speak. It's more of a wait and see approach at this point, right? Or no?
Oh, 100%. And I said that many years ago. I said, I'm done. I'm not ever going to wrestle again. But I said, but if the stars ever align,
Hmm.
they did, because I turned when they approached me about working with Kevin uh, at 38. I turned them down several times until we came up with that idea, and I
Hmm.
said yes. So we went out and did it. So could it still happen? Yeah, it could still happen. Am I lobbying for it? Am I trying to get anybody to talk about it? No, I am
Hmm.
not. But you asked me a question, and if you ever ask me a question, I'm going to give you the honest answer.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, you talk about Kevin Owens. It's cool to see like so many different talents right now in WWE in the last couple of years, but especially right now, have different like elements of you, of Stone Cold Steve Austin in them, which is cool to see. Kevin Owens being one of them, especially on the mic, what we see in the ring from him, aside from the stunner stuff, that's an obvious comparison. One name that comes to mind for me, and I talked to him about this a couple of months ago, is LA Knight. Eli Drake, obviously. I know you've had him on your podcast before. He's a great dude. He's got the yeah thing going on right now. Again, obvious similarities with the what stuff. I just want to get your thoughts on him. And again, maybe not a match down the road, but just your thoughts on LA Knight and something, doing something with him down the road.
Man, I got a text message from him a while back. I'm so bad about returning calls. My wife gets on me all the time. I got a lot of heat. But I did talk to him before that one text, and I said, "Hey man, just make sure your cardio is supreme." And I said, "Just go do you." And so that guy can talk a blue streak. He's a great worker. He's got a good look, got good energy. So I think he's doing great. I think he can ascend to a higher level, and I think he will. So I think the guy's doing awesome.
He just arrived in the main roster about a year ago, but he's already gotten over really well. The talent speaks for itself. And like I said, the obvious comparison there for a lot of people, the yeah thing that he does, the what chance and stuff like that. It's been 20 years, Steve. Your thoughts on the what chant? Do you think it's ever going to die down? What's going on there?
If it ever dies down, it does. I'm neither happy nor sad, because there's been many people who have learned how to work that out of the crowd, and it's just not giving them that pause and the cadence to let them
Yep.
get it in, because you can work them, and I think it's a challenge for talent to overcome and to defeat. So I think it's kind of like a goal. I mean, like, hey, if you're going to go out there and deliver this serious promo, and also due to the nature of a promo, whether you put in that cadence or not, if people are riveted to what you're trying to say and they're truly digging you, they're not going to say that what chant.
Yep.
Sometimes they're doing it just to f with you. So it's a barometer. It's a way to read the crowd. And what I'm saying, hey, if they say what, they don't care about somebody. No, I'm not saying that. It just depends on what crowd you get and what's the mentality of the superstar out there, how they will make that work for, against, or just snuff it out.
And of course, Steve, last question for you, kind of going off that with the current talent on today's WWE roster, all the endeavors that you took part in as part of this show, which we're very excited to see on this season, who do you think, either from the past, present, whatever, from the wrestling roster, you think would match up well with a flight simulator or with bowling? Whose talents do you think would kind of mesh well in that world?
Okay, I just got to give you one, Kurt Hennig. They call him Mr. Perfect.
That's a
The
good
old
answer.
promos when they brought him in, and he'd throw that football like 200 yards, and then he'd go down and catch his own
Yep.
pass. So down in that vein, I would have to say Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig.
Listen, he excelled at everything he did, Steve. I think that's literally, figuratively, and quite literally the perfect answer. I don't think you can get any better than that.
Yeah, he was such a great talent. I miss him. So God rest his soul. But yeah, he was amazing. And here's a Kurt Hennig story real quick before I leave.
Mhm.
I was in WCW at the time. He was in WWF. And when I came into WWF, he immediately took me, my first day at television, he took me into the production truck and introduced me to Kevin Dunn. And he goes, "Hey, Steve, this is a guy you really need to know. He can help you out." And he didn't have to do that. He just did it out of the goodness of his heart. But anyway, the story was, if you ever pass by Kurt Hennig in an airport, because we always cross each other's paths because we always travel so much. But
Mhm.
I was WCW based out of Atlanta. He was based out of Stanford. He's from Minnesota. So the deal was, if you ever pass Kurt Hennig, his gimmick was to do a shot of Jack Daniels, gargle it, and swallow it. So if he saw you, he pointed at the bar. You went to the bar, to the porter, and you had to catch a flight.
Yeah.
Take the shot of Jack, gargle it, he'd pay up, and then you'd go about your separate ways. But it was like, I don't know, it was like an honor or a privilege to gargle a shot of Jack with Kurt Hennig when you passed him in the airport, and that was a thing back in the day.
That's fantastic.
Don't matter what time of the day it was.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it is. That story definitely checks out with all the stories that I've heard about Kurt Hennig. I think that it definitely would certainly make sense. But in that same way, Steve, much an honor to speak with you here today about Stone Cold taking on America, like I said, premiering on A&E on April 30th at 10 p.m. Eastern time as part of Superstar Sundays. Steve, I told you this a couple of years ago when we spoke the last time for Straight Up Steve Austin, but every time I say goodbye to someone now, because I've been a loyal listener of Steve Austin Unleashed for the last 10 years, I always say, I'll catch your ass down the road. So I got to thank you for that. And I know you said you came from your brother. You say it all the time and stuff like that. So I always attribute it to you because you're the first person I think of when I said, because I was listening to your podcast.
Hey, I appreciate it. You know what? I've been thinking about kicking it back up. I stopped, kind of a couple years ago when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Stopped doing the in-person thing, whatever. So every now and then I'm inspired just to strike it back up, but more to talk about what I'm doing in my life, so much than to be guest driven.
Yeah.
As you know, man, you got to do a lot of research. You try to do, any kind of respect towards your guests. You can't change them. So if I can just do it at a BS level and tell a few stories, if that's enough to rope people in because you said that, I might just do it just because it'll give me something to do.
Awesome, man. Well, I look forward to it, even if it's just a fly wrestling a fly situation, just doing BS stuff like that. Those are the best shows.
Dude, that was one of, I never listen to my shows because I don't like the sound of my voice. I'm very hard on myself when I watch the edits of the show because I can't stand to watch myself either. But I listened to that show probably 5 times because that was a shoot story. No service, no nothing.
Yeah.
I saw that fly and I said, God dang, he's gonna land on the microphone. And then I called the match. So that was, I don't care who you are, that was a stroke of genius right there.
It definitely was. Some real gems in there from the last 10 years. I look forward to it. Maybe down the road, we'll see. But in the meantime, like I said, Superstar Sundays, we got Stone Cold taking on America coming soon to A&E. Steve, like I said, much an honor to speak with you today. I appreciate the time, and I'll catch your ass down the road, Steve. Thank you so much.
Down the road too. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Take care.